I was never going to be a men's physique.
Didn't have much of an off season.
I like his physique better.
I'm always very energetic. I will have to put me as one of the greatest.
Mr. Olympia was won by the back.
Jordan, I want to ask you some more functional stuff, some functional questions for you. So
Sure.
Cardio, what is your take on cardio? I mean, you know, I talk to some people and some bodybuilders, right? They tell me they did 2 hours of cardio a day. And I talk to some bodybuilders and they say no more than 15 minutes just for the heart rate. You know what I mean? Just walking on an incline just a little bit. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like weight loss and fat loss are two different things, right? So if your diet is what you say it is, I don't think the cardio is, the 2 hours a day, the days of the 2 hour a day cardio for open bodybuilding, I think is done, right? I think we can out science this. I think we can look at it from an objective perspective and be like, all right, like based off of thermodynamics, this is probably doing you more of a detriment than a benefit. I think creating a strong aerobic base in your off season is probably better. So here's the way I look at it. Guys that are doing 2 hours of cardio in prep are guys that aren't doing any cardio in the off season. Guys that are consistently, they're getting smart, man, which is great. I love to see the direction that the sport's going just from a behind the scenes and a lifestyle perspective, all things considered. I think bodybuilders now understand the risks that are coming with it. And, there's a large movement at like the amateur turning pro level that are doing it very smart. Guys that are consistently walking, setting up daily habits and routines to manage and stress, not just, physical stress, but emotional stress that comes with it. They're starting to understand and see the writing on the wall. So I think the guys that are doing 2 hours in prep are guys that are doing 0 hours in off season. Guys that are doing, 45 minutes 3 times a week, just walking their dog in off season, are doing 20 minutes extra on an incline stairs post-workout 3 times a week in their prep. So I think that's where you see the big contrast, is just opening up that frame a little bit more, that reference point, and going, okay, yes, some guys seem to benefit well off of 2 hours. Some guys seem to benefit off of, the 20-minute incline treadmill. But what are those two people doing in the off season? I figure my take is those with a better aerobic base are ones that have to actually do less, and they can go further into working sets and actually derive a cardiovascular benefit from the way they weight train, right? Like, Milos is a classic example. You do a Milos giant set, that's cardio, dude. Like you're running a marathon with your lats. You're running a Milos lat marathon. Like that's what you're doing. So, but if you have a strong aerobic base, you'll be able to derive more muscle building benefit in the actual duration of the set, as well as have a greater toolbox to draw from to recover from that stimulus. So I think as we move more to like, off season programming, incorporating cardio, I think you'll see that the 2 hour cardio thing will pretty much be the day of the past.
Do you think it's possible, like, let's say if you don't eat as clean, I'm not talking about even for bodybuilder, for like a regular person. If your diet is not as great, can you really offset it with a lot of cardio, or is it just gonna, you know what I mean? Like, is it really, let's say you do a lot of cardio, but you eat like junk food, you know what I mean? Is that gonna help?
So when I consider diet for general population, I would look at, calories in, calories out, obviously, but I would take that time frame of daily and look at it over a week, and I would also look at a protein intake daily. So if you hit protein markers on a consistent basis, and you hit your calories at the end of the week, and you are somehow able to, splurge here and there, or you maybe consistently have one bad meal a day, but your cardio and your weight training sets a net caloric deficit at the end of the week, you'll probably be able to maintain lean body mass and a relative body weight, or drop body weight, as long as your protein is there. And that's devoid of any like performance enhancing drugs or anything like that. So I think, it's based off of thermodynamics. It's possible. Thermodynamics can be a little bit tricky because you have to factor in like the hormonal implications of eating like, but if you can, if you can portion control and eat, a little, like a slice of cheesecake a day or some bullshit, I don't know. But over the course of the week, you get all your protein in every single day. You're not trading off your chicken breast for the cheesecake. You're eating the cheesecake as a surplus, and then making sure the next day you have your protein intake less your net surplus from cheesecake plus your deficit from training and cardio. Yeah, to me, logically, over the course of a week, it's doable for a general population. It's not going to get you stage ready, but I think it's a viable way to look at, not viable in the sense that it should be. It's viable. Let's say it's not optimal, but it's possible.
I still want to view a podcast, and you have an interesting take on like eating. You were saying something like, you don't really count macros, you just eat as much protein as possible, mix it in with the
I don't know what
carbs
podcast that was.
and little fat. You said, like, what is your take on, like, how do you actually, for a regular person that doesn't have a scale at home, right? Like, how do you, what's the basic way to, they say count the macros, right? A lot of people don't even know what that means. Like, well, how do you count what to eat,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a nutrition guy. Let's get that out there first. Now let's all the grilling about what I'm about to say ensue. I mean, you can find relative portion sizes based off of everyday items. Like, the size of your fist is something, like the size of a fingertip is something, like, this is, depending on the size of your fist, this is 4 ounces. This is half of that is 2 ounces, things like that. I think for most people, again, it's really protein and calories is where you would start. And then just setting up and understanding like what is in, I think tracking, at least for, as consistent enough time so that you can understand what's in food. That is a super useful tool. And like creating variability, like don't just start tracking your meals when you're eating tilapia and chicken breast, because I want you to know how much carbs are in, or how much protein is in oatmeal, or how much protein is in peanut butter, so that when you eat peanut butter, you have a relative, like you can keep an inventory of like, okay, like this is very dense in fat, there's this much protein in it, I can check that into my protein account, I can check this into my fat account, my overall calories are roughly around here. Like I think dieting for most people, or like building sustainable habits around eating, is really more about understanding how to take an inventory. It's like, all right, this is my ceiling per day of calories. This is my threshold per day of protein. Carbs and fats probably like manipulate a little bit based off how they make you feel around your training. And then the rest of it is like, I don't want to say intuitive because I think that's a bad word, but you need to be informed. Like I think informed over intuitive is like, if I have like a higher fat breakfast, I'm probably not going to go with like a higher fat dinner or something if I know I'm somewhere close to my fat intake goals, right? So for me, it's like protein first, calories and protein, that's every day. Try and make sure that we get somewhere in the wheelhouse. If we surplus on calories, think about a more net caloric deficit over the course of a week. And then and not like don't eat the next day, but it's like, all right, well, I'm going to cut this out from here, making sure that I still, am hitting my protein. So maybe I pull some carbs out from my first meal or my second meal. So it really just becomes a working inventory that you should do almost on autopilot. But I think the starting point for most people is like, just track for a little bit, just so you know, like what is actually in your food. I think that's such a valuable thing to know that most people just don't realize. And then once you do that, you're like, oh, okay, like I'm out to dinner. That's lamb, that's chicken, that's fish. What type of fish? Oh, that's a white fish versus that's salmon or that's tuna or whatever. It's like, okay, I kind of know like how these scales level out for each one of these food sources, and I can kind of ballpark it a little bit.
You're not a fan of the keto diet, right?
I just don't think it's great for, I mean, my goal is putting on muscle. I mean, I'm not a bodybuilder, but I like training like one. I don't think keto is great. Cognitive performance, maybe there's a slight benefit to it. But I think for performance, it's silly. I don't even think it's a conversation. Like and to give context, if you're an ultra marathon runner and you need to get a ton of calories in, and you have some sort of, I don't know, a genetic predisposition or autoimmune disorder, sure, yeah, keto can be great. But bodybuilders in ketosis, there are ways to do it. I know prep coaches that use very low carbs. And hey, for a short period of time, if we want to pull water out, carbs and water kind of go hand in hand. As long as we're moderating salt intake and things like that, I think it can be an effective tool. But keto as a diet identity is like, it's not for me. It's not, I don't think it's a good way to drive performance, and performance are what ultimately is going to improve aesthetics. So yeah, it's not something that I lean on too heavy.